music called hip-hop. And so, from 1979 to 1980, hip-hop is beginning to develop and beginning to move across the United States. It hits Chicago, it hits Atlanta, it hits LA. It goes all across the United States. But then something happens in 1980 in reference to hip-hop. In 1980, something happens that's amazing. Well, it's not so amazing. The guy by the name of Ronald Reagan becomes president. But also something else happens in 1980 is that you have, for the first time, hip-hop is going national, but also now is beginning to talk about racism and talking about poverty. It was a group called Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Anybody ever heard of them? All right, they had a song called The Message. Has anyone ever heard the song The Message? Raise your hand if you heard the song The Message. Don't push me cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. And so, you know what? We're going to go up to New York and we're going to find some young people. And we're going to offer them $35,000 a year. How many people like $35,000 a year? That sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it? $35,000 a year. Somebody says, but you know, they're going to pay $35,000 a year if you give me the rights to your poetry. You write something, but I own it. Whatever you write, I own it. Now, does that sound fair? If you create something, but I own it. I'll pay you $35,000. Y'all take that deal? Who's going to take the deal? Raise your hand if you're going to take the deal. You think that's the deal? All right. Everybody going to take that deal. Stand up. Stand up if you're taking the deal. I'm going to give you $35,000. Wake the brother up over here. Wake the man up over here. Wake him up if you're going to take the deal. All right, all y'all going to take the deal. Raise your hand. You're taking the deal? Raise your hand. You all taking this deal. All right. I will give you a check for $35,000. That's cool? Whatever you produce, I get to keep. All right. Now, what I forgot to tell you, that if you take this deal, stand up. Stand up for those who are taking the deal. What I forgot to tell you is this. If you take the deal, and any time I produce a CD, you produce a CD, I get 50%. You sit down. What are you talking about? I said I was going to give you $35,000. I still got $50,000, right? Oh, I forgot to tell you. After I take half off of your $50,000, I'm also going to charge you legal fees. So that's another $20,000. Right? Another $20,000, so that's $30,000. You get to keep it. Oh, I forgot to tell you. You got to pay Uncle Sam. That's the government. Your taxes. That's another $20,000. Right? Another $20,000. You'll be left with 10. 10,000. All right, now let's quiet down. Hip hop. Hip hop. All right, now. So what the corporations would do is they would offer a young person like yourself $35,000, but they would not tell them all the details in the contract. They would say, anything you produce from now on, I own. In other words, I own you. Anything you say, anything you write, anything you do, I own. And in the process of me owning you, I tell you what I want you to put in the CD. So in the 1980s, they began to create these new groups. One of the groups that they ended up creating was a group called NWA. Anybody know NWA? Another name of Ice Cube comes out of NWA. Another person by the name of Dr. Dre comes out of NWA. Put your hands down. Now in the process, no, Too Short wasn't in NWA. No, he's West Coast though, but he wasn't in the NWA. And so, in the process, they say this: I own everything that you do, but in order for you is graffiti, and another pillar is breakdancing. And all of those things are the pillars in New York of what made up hip-hop. Now, hip-hop is a music that has the ability to talk about your situation. It is a music that can communicate all that's going on. Wait a minute, y'all gonna talk now while I'm talking? Or do you want me to talk? Which is it? You gonna let me talk? Thank you. All right, you pointed at your boy right over here. I pointed at both of y'all. All right? The two of y'all. And so hip-hop is music that allows you to talk about your situation, that you can talk about and communicate to a variety of people. So in the 1980s, as corporations are saying, I'll pay you $35,000, something else is also happening in every urban area in America. In the 1980s and 1984, crack cocaine hits every urban center in America. Corporations are buying independent labels and saying, we want you to put these lyrics in play. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's mighty interesting that at the same time that corporations are saying that we want this in the music, we don't want you to talk about your community, we want you to talk about each other. It's the same time that crack cocaine is hitting all across the community. And so there is a major change in the music because it's no longer controlled by the people who produce the music. And so a lot of people like to talk about it, but the same thing is, on one level, is that we also need to understand that the music is... Sit back down, sit down, sit down, sit down. They all claim to be good at basketball. How many people here believe if you can play basketball, you should also be good at math and science? Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. How many people are good at math and science because they play basketball? How many A science students do I have in the house? How many A math students do I have in the house? Tell the truth. All y'all got A's? You got an A in math? You got an A? All A, but you all are doing very well. I'm glad to hear that. Put that down. Put your hands down. And what I simply want to say to each of you is that those of you who play basketball should be able to do very well when it comes to your academics. Because basketball and academics are one and the same if you begin to understand your purpose in God. If you begin to understand your purpose, that everything you do is interconnected. And let me break it down so you understand what I'm trying to say. If you can take a spherical object that is 33 inches in circumference, bounce it down the spatial dimensions of a basketball court that is 92 feet long, 54 feet wide, moving roughly 7 to 8 miles per hour, bouncing that spherical object that is 33 inches in circumference, bouncing it roughly 7 to 8 times every 10 to 11 seconds as you're moving down the spatial dimensions of a court that is 92 feet long by 54 feet wide. Then move down to the other end of that court and jump roughly 40 inches vertically, 7 feet horizontally up to a basket that is 10 feet high, taking a spherical object that is 33 inches in circumference and then dunk it into that basket. Then you are literally physics in motion. But if all you understand yourself as doing is simply playing basketball, that the mere act of your movement is an act of physics and an act of science, you will end up becoming a better student. How many people here have ever heard of Edwin Moses? Anyone ever heard of Edwin Moses? Raise your hand. Edwin Moses, he did what? Anybody know what he did? Hurdles, right. Edwin Moses went to Morehouse College, my alma mater. He was the gold medalist in the hurdles. He was considered to be the greatest hurdler in history, bar none. And the reason Edwin Moses became the greatest hurdler in history, bar none, is not because of the track that he ran on. Morehouse College did not have a track. He had no place to practice. He used to practice on the grass and on the dirt. What he did do is that he got with his physics teacher. And with his physics teacher, he found out this, that based upon his height, since Edwin Moses was 6'4", he said they found out that if you can run between 12 strides in between every hurdle, then you will win every race. The reason that was important is because up until that point, people always ran 13 to 14 strides between every hurdle. But they figured out by examining his height and his weight, if he could train his body to run 12 strides in between every hurdle, no one will be able to beat him. Well, they figured it out on paper. Then they figured out, in some form or fashion, how to actually do it on the track. And once Edwin Moses figured that out on paper because of academics, he was never defeated until he was almost 40 years old running the hurdles. Because he first understood the connection between academics and athletics. And for each of you, there are people